LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's 3 minutes past 11. Well, it's 11 o'clock for the last 5 weeks. We have been talking to, interviewing, allowing you to phone not candidates necessarily, but representatives of the main political parties who are taking part in these European elections. We've had Nigel Farage on, Joe Swinson, many others. Well, today it's the turn of the Conservatives, and David Davis, the former Brexit Secretary, is with me. Somebody tweeted earlier, are you going to declare your interest with David Davis? So I will do that and tell you right from the outset, as if most of you didn't know anyway, that I've known David for 30 years or so now.
Something like that, yeah.
And I did work for him as Chief of Staff for an all too brief period during the 2005 leadership election.
And I haven't forgiven you yet.
No, which explains why he's not Prime Minister now and I'm sitting here. Right, in about 25 minutes time we'll take some calls, but before that let's look at, first of all, the European election. We might come on to the Tory leadership contest a little bit later as well. Why should anyone vote Conservative on Thursday?
Well, because the Conservatives are in that running. I mean, the only Eurosceptic party that is likely to form any sort of government. Nigel Farage has said he doesn't want to be Prime Minister. This is a protest vote for him. He pretty much said as much. And I normally vote in elections for people who can deliver something. And the Tory party can and will deliver Brexit. We're going to. Obviously, I'm not the best person to be the exponent of the current government's line, but there we are.
Well, it's taken 3 years. How can anyone be confident that the Conservative government is going to deliver Brexit?
Well, because they're the only party that's got a sort of serious commitment to it, other than the DUP in the House of Commons. And I mean, we're going to go through in the next few weeks one more cycle of the Prime Minister's proposal. I think that'll fail, to be frank, and at that point it'll be time for a new Prime Minister, and that new Prime Minister will deliver it, I'm sure.
But you can't say that because you don't know who that new Prime Minister would be. You will have had people from your own Conservative association, I'm sure, saying to you, well, David, I'm not going to vote Conservative at these European elections. I'm going to vote for Nigel Farage. Do you try and dissuade them, or do you just say, well, I understand how you feel? Because I suspect you feel like that too.
The answer is both. I try and dissuade them, because obviously I want as many Tory MEPs in the European Parliament in this very short space, probably till October, in which the last round of the negotiation will go, and so that for that reason alone, I try and persuade them. Not necessarily that successfully, I have to admit. Yeah.
No. And you yourself are going to vote Conservative.
I am going to vote Conservative. I've always voted Conservative, never anything else.
What happens, though, if you're supporting Dominic Raab in the leadership contest, you decided not to stand for yourself? Well, might come on to that in a moment, but just sticking on the subject of the future in the EU. If a no-dealer is elected, like Dominic Raab or indeed maybe Boris Johnson, what happens then? Because they will still face the same problems that Theresa May faces now.
Well, you describe them as a no-dealer. Let's get that straight for a start. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Both of them would prefer a deal. Both Boris and Dominic, and indeed I think any of the other very pro-Leave candidates who are likely to run would favour a deal. The point of no deal in the first instance is to maintain a negotiating position and the ability to walk away from the table. That has always seemed to me so obvious, it's fatuous, to oppose it. And yet that's the position they have, that both of them are willing to go to no deal, but they're not the only ones. I mean, in Cabinet, I don't think I'm breaking any great confidences, but in Cabinet, people like Jeremy Hunt and Matt Hancock, hardly the most, the sort of the pin-ups of the Leave movement, were agreed that no deal had to be kept on the table.
So why wasn't it? Because you were Brexit Secretary for 2 years, and yet Theresa May clearly was never going to keep it on the table, or was that her decision?
No, that wasn't. To be frank to you, that wasn't that apparent during that time. I mean, if she had said in terms we're not going to do no deal, I would have left that moment, because I've always taken the view that without no deal there, the European Union will not negotiate in good faith. And I think when after I went, no deal sort of evaporated completely as an option. I think they really didn't negotiate in good faith. I think we've seen that in the outcome, the deal she's come back with, which, bear in mind, is actually worse than the deal I negotiated. I'm sorry, the deal I resigned over, her proposal I resigned over. So you've got to keep no deal.
But you see, this is where people don't quite understand your position, because you're right, it is worse than the deal you resigned over, and yet you voted for it in the House of Commons.
Yeah, we got to a position. I mean, I voted against it. The first, when it was,
eventually you did.
Back in July, I told her in terms just before I resigned, look, this is what's going to happen if you go down this route. You'll get murdered in the House of Commons. I didn't forecast 230, whatever it was. I said it's going to be well over 100 votes against you. And she didn't believe me. So we made that point. She then went away to modify it to some extent. The real key modifications around Northern Ireland, she's got some sorts of concessions. They're not good enough, but something. And I took the view, frankly, if we don't get something through, this will collapse into chaos. And that, again, is precisely what's happened. The chaos of really no outcome, of being paralysed where we are, which is why we will end up with a new leader. And when that new leader comes in, then they'll have to have the most freedom possible. So from now on, I mean, for example, I won't be voting for the second reading.
You won't?
No.
But again, surely if you voted, essentially
Look,
it's going to be a similar thing. It's going to be a similar.
Ian, no,
thing,
it's not.
It?
Ian, this is not some saloon bar conversation. This is about the future of the country. The technicalities matter. That first deal was a disaster, right? So I voted against it. She got an inadequate improvement. In my view, if it had just been a simple yes, no on that, it didn't matter. I would have voted against again. But the trouble was, I could see what was happening. There'd be nothing better coming down the road. And so we had to create the option for her successor. Not for her, the option for her successor to improve on it and improve on what we had. That's why I voted for it. And of course, I've had lots of people say, oh, well, what are you doing? You're supporting it and so on. This is because it was the best thing for the country. Now, next round, at the second reading of the withdrawal and implementation bill, or WAIB people call it. Why should I vote for that? Well, not just because I voted for the last one, but because, why should I vote against it? Because what it will do is it will create the platform for people to try and get into the law, remember, not just a motion of parliament. It will try and get into the law possibilities of restricting us to staying in a customs union, one of the things I think she's going to try and do now. Possibility of requiring a second referendum. Certainly Keir Starmer's trying to do that.
So you think that will be in the bill?
No. Make my point again. Second reading just starts the bill process. Then you have a whole series of committee stages and report stages in which the law will be set. Now, that's the point. And so any incoming Prime Minister, incoming leader of the Tory party and Prime Minister, will then be shackled by that.
And from discussions that you've had with your colleagues, and I'm sure a lot of them talk to you about this because of your previous involvement, do you get the feeling that there will be a lot of MPs who, like you, supported the meaningful vote last time that will now switch back?
Yes.
How many?
Oh, I don't know that.
Are we talking 10? Are we talking 50?
Look, it would be a guess, Ian.
You used to be a whip, so you're quite used to parliamentary numbers.
Yeah, but I never guessed. I always knew the numbers. That's one of the distinctions between whipping in those days and now. I knew the numbers. But the intends, I would think, to be as close as I can give you, because the reason I say that is about 30 of the Tories who voted against the so-called meaningful vote first time round voted for it second time round, and I think both those would go.
So if we say Dominic Raab or Boris Johnson is elected the new leader, and they are far more willing to contemplate no deal than maybe some others, how do you convince people that that there will be sort of sunny uplands after a no deal? Because obviously most economists think that it would provide a huge amount of problems, and there must be some element.
Those same ones that forecast.
Well, indeed,
God
but there
knows
must
how
be
many
some
percent
element
cuts,
of
the loss
doubt in your mind on this, because you can't be certain. What if you're wrong? What if there was an economic collapse after a no deal?
Well, I think an economic collapse is utterly improbable. I mean, there are much bigger risks to the British economy than no deal. One of them is called Jeremy Corbyn, actually. But I've spent years trawling through all of the things that would provide a challenge and a threat. And the vast majority of them, not every single one, but the vast majority of them were just bogus scare stories. You know, the stuff on insulin, a bogus scare story. The whole stuff about drugs being short. How can it be if we're controlling our imports? The stuff about food being short, also ridiculous. I mean, a whole series.
Well, you say that, but then you hear from food producers, food importers, who give you chapter and verse over what the problems would be. You can't just.
And I've been
dismiss
through
them
the
like
chapter
that.
and verse. That's the problem. I mean, over the course of a couple of years, we ran 300 different projects on the issues that arise, both in no deal and deal outcomes. Now, there will be a bump. I've always said for years. I've said there will be bumps along the way. I mean, we may find the odd European country trying to make a few bumps along the way. I'm not going to.
But that's enough about France.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to offer you an example, but you can pick your own. So you may have some bumps, but what you will not have is a long run problem for all sorts of reasons, and I'm not kidding. The economists you are citing, virtually all are the economists who said we were going to have a disaster the moment we voted to leave, and we haven't had. We've had a fabulous economic performance in the last couple of years.
Well, growth at 1.5% is that fabulous?
Wait a minute. You're looking against the rest of Europe, where we're doing better than virtually all of them. You're looking at inward investment, we're the second highest in the world and the highest in Europe by a long margin. Looking at employment, higher than any time in my or your lifetimes. Unemployment as low as it's been in my adult lifetime. All these things, and you're also seeing wages increase as well, incidentally, which wasn't something that's being gone up for the
still less than the average wage now is still less than it was in 2008, 5% less.
But actually, interestingly, the increases have all been since the Brexit vote, not before. You know, the previous austerity policy, which had different issues, did not deliver improvements there. So, anybody who tells you they know what the economy is going to do next year is not right.
No, but that's the point, isn't it?
Because it's a judgment balance.
A lot of people on your side of the Brexit argument seem to be incredibly certain that everything will turn out right in the end, that the economy will thrive, that all these trade deals will be done. But there must be times when you have had moments of doubt on this, and you thought, well, what if I'm wrong?
Yeah, well, when I have, when you call it a moment of doubt, a moment of uncertainty, I go away and look at the facts. That's what I do.
But you can't be sure of facts because it's the future. You can have faith in what happens, but you can't rely on facts there, can you?
But what I don't do is allow myself to be panicked by people who've never run an international company. I have. Who've never operated across a border. I have, a much more difficult one than the European border, and who haven't spent 2 or 3 years trawling through all the data on this stuff and the issue and what we have to do to deal with it. Now, there are issues. Let me highlight 1 or 2 of them for you, so it's clear. I mean, the issues of the possible choking up of the Calais-Dover link. That's the most vulnerable link of all the links.
It's good that you recognise that, because Dominic Raab seemed to have a little bit of an issue knowing the facts on that.
I'm not answering somebody else's interview. There's a potential choke point there. But the point about that choke point is it cuts both ways. If the French make it difficult to move goods into France, it will lock up the other way. It's the same boat going backwards and forwards, or boats, plural, going backwards and forwards. What will happen? Well, firstly, what did I do when I saw that? Well, firstly, what do we need to do to make sure we can go through? We can do things about the inspection rate, so we can accelerate things through. We talk to the French, who are doing the same. I actually said this on the Today programme, one of your competitors, not that long ago. They rushed off the next day to talk to the French, the head of the Calais port, thinking he'd disagree with me. He didn't. He agreed. In fact, he was rather offended that they'd even questioned the point. What they do, they put him on at 6:10 in the morning. So
that's why Nick Ferrari at breakfast has record listening figures.
Exactly. So you get the point. I mean, and every single time I go through the facts, I said, okay, what happens if it does block up? Well, we can move 40% of the trade to other ports if need be, 20% of the ro-ro trade, and the rest in containers. And I go through it time again. And you and I have talked the odd thing about ports down the years.
Well, we have, haven't we?
And I know a few things about
Paul
them.
in Bedford says, I'm employed in the German automotive industry. Can Mr. Know-it-all Davis guarantee my job is safe if we leave with no deal? Ignore the sort of pejorative bit there. But that is actually quite an important question, because you were the first one to say, well, of course, the German car industry is going to make sure that this all happens because they have far more to lose than anyone else. We'll be doing a trade deal with Germany and we'll be off to Berlin on day one, ignoring the fact that we can't actually do trade deals with Germany. It has to be with the whole of the EU. But how can you be sure that Paul's job is safe?
That's not an accurate quote from me, but that's by the by.
Well, you tweeted it. How can Paul be assured that his job is safe?
Well, the first thing to say is this is one of the reasons that a deal will happen in due course. When the Halle Institute, which is a leading German economic institute, actually assessed the impacts of no deal outcome on all of the continent, its assessment was that it would possibly put at risk 12,000 jobs in the UK, but it would put at risk 100,000 jobs in Germany and 50,000 jobs in France and 30,000 jobs in Poland and Spain, and that's why it won't happen. Because exactly my comment about the German car industry knocking on Merkel's doors. They have been knocking on Merkel's door for over the last year, and actually, just about the point that our nerve collapsed and all of this, they were shaping up to say we must avoid no deal. We understand that Merkel's had four conversations, in a course of a month or two, had four conversations with Varadkar to try to get him to soften on the Northern Irish thing, because they were concerned about it. The whole of Europe is more concerned, more reason to be concerned about no deal than. But
they're also
Britain.
more concerned with the integrity of the single market, aren't they? Even the head of the German CBI, the head of VW Audi, has said we will not risk the integrity of the single market.
Well, they don't need to. They don't need to. I mean, heavens above. I mean, they've got coming into after the Japanese treaty. They're going to have cars coming direct from Japan. It's one of the reasons Honda, got nothing to do with Brexit, but Honda's interest is actually because of the Japanese deal. That's not going to affect the integrity of the single market. So why should it, coming from us, who already obey all their rules, give them that problem?
Don't forget, you can put your questions to David
and I'll try
Davis
not to know it all as well.
After 11:30, 0345 6060 973. Why break the habit of a lifetime? It's 11:20.
LBC.
To perform at work, we each need to be at our best. Bupa understands the importance of workplace mental well-being.
Mental health issues can affect anyone, and what we know is that early diagnosis improves outcomes. So it is really important that everybody recognizes what's happening to them and speaks up about it.
Find out more about Bupa's Open Up campaign, download the free Manager's Guide, and enter to win a wellness tech bundle at lbc.co.uk. Bupa. Healthy minds, healthy business.
Unlock the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Know your side streets, from your inner city beats. Know your underbelly and where to fill your belly.
Your lamb, madam.
Know your north from your south. Live for the city with the new Range Rover Evoque. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Have you ever bought an investment sold by Barclays, Halifax, Lloyds, Santander, or any other bank or financial advisor? Investments like stocks and shares ISAs, investment bonds, and certain types of pension can be risky. If you lost money with one of these investments, you could be owed thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, here at Goodwin Barrett, we can still help. To start your free assessment with Goodwin Barrett, text GOOD to 60777. That's GOOD to 60777.
Have you discovered Karcher's most advanced pressure washers? With Karcher's Full Control Plus technology, you can select the perfect setting for every cleaning task with just a touch of a button. What's more, until the 31st of May, you can claim up to £50 cash back on our Full Control Plus pressure washers. Visit your local B&Q, Screwfix or Wickes and get yours today. Terms and conditions apply. Visit karcher.co.uk to find out more.
Find a fresh new look in the mid-season sale at Oak Furnitureland. It's all delivered free, but it ends Sunday. At a store near you.
This is a luxury escape to Barbados. Snorkeling in beautifully secluded bays, enjoying pristine sandy beaches, and savouring locally caught seafood. This is the ultimate USA road trip, taking in the Pacific coast, verdant canyons, and national parks bursting with wildlife. These are travel bag holidays, packed with 40 years of experience. To book, visit us in store or at travelbag.co.uk.
To all who've travelled with Eurotunnel the shuttle, the outdoorsy types, foodie types, E-types, Jaguars, dogs, cats, alpacas, boot packers, last-minute packers, kitchen sink packers, motorhomes, motorbikers, mountain bikers, surfboarders, snowboarders, crossing borders with feet up on the dashboarders, long legs, first timers, and the let's just take it all in our own timers. It's our 25th birthday, but we're wishing you many happy returns. Join the celebration at Eurotunnel.com.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
24 minutes past 11. We'll come to your calls in a few minutes' time. David Davis is with us. David, you were an early supporter of Boris Johnson in 2016 in that leadership contest. Obviously, he came to grief rather quickly. Why aren't you supporting him this time?
Well, I'm supporting Dominic Raab. I'm not on his campaign or anything. I'm just supporting him. But I had, in all these things, you make a judgment. Who's the right man for the moment, really? And at the moment, we have two big challenges. One, obviously, Brexit, we've been talking about. That's going to require a high degree of nerve and courage. I mean, the big failure of the government in the last year has been a failure of nerve, really, whether it's on no deal or the actual negotiation. And it requires a great deal of nerve and courage. Both Boris and Dominic have got that. It will require a ferocious grip of detail. We had this little skirmish earlier about why I'm doing this on this bill and so on. You've got to actually know all the tactics, all the detail, all the negotiating lines and so on. I think Dominic has an edge. He's an incredibly precise brain and so on.
You're surely not alleging that Boris Johnson isn't a details man.
I didn't say anything about Boris at that point. Forgive me. I'm not going to go into it.
That's how everyone would have interpreted it, though.
Not at all. And also, Dominic's got a good backstory. He's a very meritocratic. I mean, I'm big on social mobility and so on. And I've known him very well for a long time. And I think he's the best. I mean, let me be clear. I think there are a few good candidates. I mean, Boris and Dominic and others. But I just think on this occasion, Dominic is the man for the hour.
But isn't it the case that you worked with Boris Johnson in government, you saw what he was like as Foreign Secretary, and you weren't that impressed?
No, that's not the case, and that hasn't featured. That sort of judgment or anything like that judgment hasn't featured in this. It's a question of what is necessary for the moment, what's necessary for the day, and so we've got to have to do that. The other thing where Boris supporters will claim an advantage is on the other thing you have to do is to be able to beat Corbyn in an election. Because there will be an election at some point, whether it's this year or in 3 years' time. And I think one of the reasons we did poorly in the last elections, we didn't really have an answer. What the horrible phrase that the sort of technocrats who do elections got, we didn't have a retail offer. We didn't have actually an answer for all the problems that the sort of 25 to 45-year-olds. It wasn't the sort of 18-year-olds that was the big issue for us. That's always been a big issue for us. But it was the 25 to 40-year-olds who we lost in that election, because we didn't have an answer on housing, we didn't have an answer on student loans, we didn't have an answer on education or cost of living. If you're a youngster,
do you regret advising Theresa May to hold that election, given that there wasn't the offer on all of that?
The judgment to hold the election was the right judgment. The judgment to run it the way they ran it was the wrong one in spades. We blew a 21-point lead with a daft manifesto. Minister.
You have to take partial responsibility for that.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
a senior cabinet minister. You dipped your hand in the blood of the decision.
Yes,
for
of course.
Sake.
Yes,
So,
I never said for a second that it wasn't part of my responsibility for the actual decision to go. Indeed, every single member of the cabinet went along with it, every single one. So don't let anybody tell you they didn't on the day in terms of dipping their fingers in the blood. But it was a terrible campaign.
Well, I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah,
but
but part of the campaign, I mean, the manifesto was bad. The slogans were bad. We didn't engage on debates where we should have done all those things. But in the centre of it all, don't lose sight of this key point, and that is that we didn't have an answer for the people who were. When I was 30 or 25 or thereabouts, the 65% of my cohort were buying their own homes. Now it's 25%, When I left university, I didn't have to have a great burden of a student loan hanging over me, which I could never repay. All my children have still got their student loans to this day, but haven't earned enough to repay. I had the prospect of a great career with income increases every year. They haven't got that. So we've got to. And, I didn't have the cost of childcare that they have to face today. We need to address that, and we need people who understand that and live that life in order to be able to provide a good leadership.
Do you also regret the fact that you could have ousted Theresa May as Prime Minister on the day after that election? But
no,
you were
yes, of course I could.
You were the first to have come to her defence. Well, you would probably be Prime Minister now if you'd done that,
that's right. That's right. But that's likely the case. But the first thing to say is I signed up. Your listeners wouldn't, but when I sign up to support somebody, I support them, and it's body and soul support. It's 100% support, and if I can't do that, I leave. And maybe that makes me quirky or strange or mad, but that's my view on these things. And I was not about to oust her. She made some big mistakes, but I was not about to oust her.
Just very briefly, because we want to go to calls in a moment.
Yeah.
The big row that I think is about to hit the Tory party in June is the length of the leadership contest. Now, you and I both remember back in 2005.
Yeah, when they stretched it out to try and beat me. That's right.
Yeah, where you were content to go along with that timetable because you thought you'd win anyway. Now, do you think that this should be a short leadership contest or a longer one?
I was content to go along with it because I thought it was infra-dig to start talking about the rules once the game got underway. And you're right. Of course, the establishment of the party today was trying to rig every rule against us. You remember that. But I think in this case, there's a national interest issue here, and this impinges quite heavily on the whole debate around this. The new leader, whoever it is, whether it's Boris or Dominic or Jeremy or Matt or whoever who comes in, will need the summer, all of the summer, to do three things. Number one is to reopen the negotiation with the European Union on the basis, I think in most cases, I'm not sure what they all want to do, but I would think most of them want to go for the Malthouse Compromise, the sort of the only thing that's got a House of Commons majority. So a very powerful argument for that. They must reopen it on that. That they need the summer, because the Europeans won't just say yes, of course. They'll need a lot of persuasion. All the countries will. Secondly, they've got to do the overt preparation for no deal. There's been a lot of covert preparation for no deal, but this overt preparation needs to be done. The truth is, the more we publicly prepare, the less likely it's to happen. So
you would prefer it was all finished by end of July, beginning of August, rather than go through to September, October?
Yes, and the last thing is that in the event we do get forced into a general election, nobody wants one, I don't want one, then we're ready for that too, and that's the domestic agenda, which has been really sort of ignored for the last year or two.
Okay.
So, yes, 1st of August is the deadline, I think.
Right, that's me done. Over to you now. 0345 6060973 if you'd like to put your calls to David Davis. It's 11:31 news headlines. Philip Chriskos.
The Prime Minister will begin last-ditch talks with MPs tomorrow to get her Brexit agreement through Parliament. Theresa May says she'll make a bold offer, understood to be a customs union, ahead of a fourth vote next month. Separately, it's claimed the Prime Minister personally blocked legislation to protect former veterans from prosecution. The Sunday Telegraph says it's seen a leaked memo in which Theresa May objected to an amnesty for veterans who served in Northern Ireland. Manchester City captain Vincent Kompany says he's leaving the club to become player-manager of Belgian side Anderlecht. His final game for City was yesterday evening's 6-0 win over Watford in the FA Cup final at Wembley Stadium. LBC weather, warm sunshine and scattered showers, some of those showers heavy and slow moving, a high of 18 degrees.
This is LBC.
It's hard to put your finger on what makes a Mini. The iconic design? Unique handling? But what really makes you smile is just its, well, sheer mininess. Get your Mini 3-door Hatch 1 Classic with LED lights and 6.5-inch infotainment screen for only $199 per month. Search Mini offers to find out more. Who's in? Mini UK is a credit broker. £2,000 initial rental. 48-month hire agreement from Mini Financial Services. Subject to status and availability. For new vehicles ordered by 30th June 2019 and registered by 30th September 2019 UK only. Guarantees may be required. Mileage and other conditions apply when you return the vehicle. T's and C's apply.
Oh, next door, having another barbecue. Oh, and it smells amazing.
Fired up for a bank holiday barbecue feast? Get to B&Q. We've a massive range of charcoal and gas barbecues, including the Rockwell 200 charcoal barbecue for just £83. It'll easily feed up to 8 people. You can do it when you B&Q it.
Second time an @Uber driver has found my wallet. Forever thankful for honest people in the world. Good karma for sure. That was a tweet from Leighton Williams. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better than Leighton. So thank you. Uber. Where to?
So much confusion. Half-price carbonara with car insurance? Do I want another meal or just a good deal? Confused.com give you £20 free Texaco fuel with your car insurance. A free gift that makes sense? It's that easy. £20 free Texaco fuel with your car insurance. Don't be confused. Be Confused.com. Full T's and C's online. Scottish postcode exceptions and conditions apply. Offer ends 31st of May.
The real reason Sleeping Beauty fell asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell. And the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
At Ford, we know it's not our vans alone that keep Britain running. It's the people that drive them. You. From plumbers to plasterers, engineers to electricians, we're proud to serve those who serve our nation with a new range of commercial vehicles. Take the work out of parking with the tough new Transit, available with enhanced active park assist. Or power up for the future with our incredible mild hybrid engines being introduced on selected models. There's something in the lineup that'll serve you. Discover the range at ford.co.uk or visit your local transit centre. Ford Commercial Vehicles. Backbone of Britain.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
25 to 12 here on LBC. We've got David Davis with us. By the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. You can watch us on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, on our YouTube channel, on our Twitter feed and Facebook. So let's go to...
I was wearing a tie on weekend.
No, indeed. I never wear a tie. Let's go to your calls. Trevor is in Southampton. Trevor, what would you like to ask?
Good morning, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Good morning.
I'm a lifelong Conservative, voted since 1980. A lot of respect for David Davis. He's been caught up in the treachery of others in the party. My local MP, Royston Smith, is also excellent, and he's also on our side. But we've all gone to the Brexit party. Theresa May and the government is despised by Conservative voters locally, and that is not too strong a word. If we do not get a strong Brexit leader and a proper Brexit, I fear there is no future for the Conservative Party at all, and people like David Davis are going to get caught up in what's happened, and I'm extremely worried, but I don't know if it's not already too late.
I don't think it's too late. I mean, don't worry about me. I'll live through it, whatever happens. I have a lot of sympathy with that argument. I think if we don't deliver Brexit, we will lose any election whenever it happens.
Don't you think that ship has already sailed, though? No. These people like Trevor, who've gone to the Brexit party, once you voted for another party once, it's so much easier to do it the second time.
Well, you could have. You could say that in many European elections. I think just take the Brexit Party at its own measure for a second. Take Nigel Farage's measure. He says he effectively says he's leading it as a protest. He said he doesn't want to be prime minister. He wants to deliver deliver Brexit. Well, if the new leader says, right, this is the timetable, we're going to deliver Brexit irrespective of getting a deal, we'll try and get a deal, we'll be the most reasonable we can. We go around all the Europeans and talk to them all, and I tell you, the nation states will have a very strong view at this stage, having been scared by the near no deal. Then I think they will deliver it. And all right, it's 2 years later than I would have, or 1 year later than I would have preferred it to be, but it will be delivered, and in the longer run, it will deliver a fantastic future for Britain. It'll lead to a complete revolution of expectations. But most importantly at the moment, you're talking about the Tory party, we've got to learn to keep our promises. Once we keep our promise, I think we will reset this game.
But Trevor, if there was a general election, say in the next 12 months, and we haven't left the EU by then, presumably if Nigel Farage puts up a candidate in your constituency, you would stay with him.
Oh, you know, with respect to David, I mean, I'm a big fan of David. Don't get me wrong. People like David in the party, you're proper Conservatives in a party that's been taken over by Liberal Democrats, in my view. But I now believe, I went to the Leave Means Leave rally in London on the 29th when we should have been leaving, and I met hundreds of... I went there to see what these people were like. I met hundreds of Conservative voters, hardly any that weren't, all like me, who were going to vote for the Brexit Party because they were disgusted about the way that we've been treated. Now, David is right. We need this delivered. Otherwise, if the Conservatives get 9% in next week's election, would he ever imagine in his lifetime that the Conservatives in government will get 9% in an election? I mean, I don't know if there's any position back from that, and I absolutely agree with you. I think there is a groundswell of support for Nigel Farage, who's been an excellent leader, and we need an excellent leader. We do not need Theresa May.
Who do you want then, Trevor?
Well, I think that Boris. I mean, Boris is a leader and an influential figure. I don't care about what comes with him. He would have delivered Brexit 2 years ago, and we'd be having a different argument now about how successful it's been. Dominic Raab, I don't know if he's tough enough. You need somebody really tough to do the job for us now. You know, David is a very nice man, but we need really, really tough people out there to sort this out. Otherwise, if it drags on, the Conservative Party, I do not know if it'll ever recover.
All right, Trevor, thank you. Let's go to Cameron, who's in Lingfield. What's your point, Cameron?
I had two questions for David Davis. The first one was on Radio 4 not long ago. You said that from the very start, the whole Brexit negotiations have been appallingly mishandled. But I know that you were running them from the very start. So do you take responsibility for how the negotiations went? And the second question was that you also said that doing a deal with the EU would be the easiest deal in the world that we'd ever have to do. And that's proven not to be the case. And no one campaigned on a no-deal Brexit. No one campaigned on a no-deal Brexit during the debate. So is it right now to put that option back to the people if that's something we're seriously considering?
Well, first thing to say is let's deal with it backwards. The no-deal Brexit. What people campaigned on was a general idea of Brexit. You're quite right. It wasn't made very specific, but some things were very plain. One was that we did not expect to be in the customs union. Why do I say that? Because on the same programme on Andrew Marr, David Cameron and George Osborne on the one side, and Michael Gove and Boris Johnson on the other side both said this means leaving the single market, it means leaving the customs union. There was no dispute between the campaigns of that. So that's clear. Secondly, in terms of the issue of the deal being easy, it should have been easy. We did it badly. Now, let me tell you why we did it badly, and I'll tell you what my part in it was. You can make your own judgment on my responsibility. It's not for me to say. History will judge me for that. Number one, we should not have given away what's called the sequencing. At the point, everybody thought it was a very technical. At the time, everybody thought it was a very technical argument. But the sequencing, when we do things, when we address them, if we had addressed the issue of the future deal at the same time, the future economic partnership, at the same time as we're talking about giving them 39 billion in money, at the same time as we're talking about making sure that European citizens were properly looked after in the UK, it would have been a different negotiation.
But why didn't you insist on that?
Unfortunately, the Prime Minister had already given it away, or the Prime Minister's team had already given it away by the time I arrived in Brussels. I didn't know this. I mean, I was saying on air, maybe even on your programme, certainly on other programmes during the election campaign, this will be the fight of the summer, only to find it's been given away. You can't pull it back once you've done that. That's point one. Second point was at Christmas, just before Christmas of the year before last, when I thought we'd struck a deal. The Prime Minister's team came in and conceded the so-called the harmonisation, basically, the full alignment of the rules of the market between Northern Ireland and the Republic and, of course, the rest of the European Union. I said to her at the time, "You can't do this, Prime Minister. This is in denial of your own speeches. This is harmonisation." "Oh no," she said, "this is just full alignment of outcomes." And I said, "Well, are you sure that the other side see it that way? Because there's a history in international negotiation, going back to the Balfour Declaration onwards, of the same words meaning different things to either side. Oh, we need to make progress. We need to make progress." Well, I thought, interestingly at the time, I thought this would not get through the House the next week, and I was completely wrong about that, because the House sort of lapped it up, even Jacob Rees-Mogg and that wing of the party, because they were so nervous about not making progress. I wasn't. I thought we could go to March without making progress. So, and I did think at that time, well, do I step down? Because this is not... And I thought, no, I've signed up. You know my view on these things. I've loyally signed up to do the job. I'll try and make this work. And it became apparent after March that was not going to happen.
Have you seen this BBC4 documentary?
No, I haven't yet. I'm told it's astonishing.
I suspect you would gain from watching that. I've watched some of it, but the reports I've heard of the rest of it, it's quite clear that they would have given away on a lot of things had they been pressed.
Pushed, exactly right.
Cameron, are you reassured by any of that?
Not particularly. I mean, the whole process has been poorly handled, as I think you said, and I think that it's right, based on where we are with the negotiations and where we are with the outcome, that we probably need to ask the people again about what they think should happen, because we can't get an agreement within Parliament, and any new leader that comes is going to face into the same arithmetic that Theresa May faced into. So I'm worried that we're just going to, no matter who the leader is, we're going to be having the same conversation in 6 months' time.
That's an interesting point, because you are on the record of being in favour of a second referendum some years ago.
No. Let's get that.
No. You were in favour of a confirmatory referendum on a deal.
Let's get this right, shall we? Once and for all. I mean, I was in favour of two things. Two referenda, you're quite right. But the first one was the mandate referendum. In other words, the point that Cameron's just made, take to the country precisely the deal we're trying to get. And then, once you've got that, you'd probably be able to get 70% support for that. So it's what I thought Cameron should have done before he tried, not this Cameron, sorry, David Cameron, beg your pardon, Cameron. David Cameron should have done before he went off to negotiate. He would have had much, much more leverage. And then you come back and say, have we got enough of it? That's the way you do it. You don't have a decision, get the decision, not like the decision, because most of the people who want a second referendum, not all of them, but nearly all of them, are actually Remainers, and then come back and say, let's have the question again. So can I answer one other thing that Cameron said, and I think will be a lot of people will think it, that nothing will change, as it were, in this round of negotiation. One thing that has changed is when we got close to the 29th, and nobody knew whether we were going to leave or not, the Europeans suddenly focused. They had been quite happy to let the Commission maintain everything for quite a long time, and all the countries suddenly focused on the consequence for them of no deal outcome. And broadly speaking, it's much worse for them than it would be for us. And that's what's changed. And that's why Merkel's engaged. Merkel is said to have said, it's second hand, so I can't be sure of it, but Merkel is said to have said that she made a mistake back in December of the year before last, because she was so focused on constructing her own government, she wasn't paying attention to the European negotiation, and she let the sort of Irish issue get bigger than it should have been. All of that has changed. So with a tough new leader, and it has to be a tough new leader, we'll get a different game, I think.
OK, James says, hi, Messrs Dale and Davis. What a bright and happy future for England. No Brexit and no Tories. Can't happen soon enough. It's 11:46.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
Lord Heseltine for the Tories and Dame Margaret Hodge for Labour have both said they won't be voting for their own parties because of Brexit. Will you be boycotting one of the two main parties over Brexit?
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
On the evening of Tuesday the 3rd, my husband and I were discussing how best to sell our house. I told him purple bricks make you do it all yourself. That was fake news. Purple Bricks can do everything from viewings to negotiating your sale. For this, I would like to apologise to my husband unreservedly. We request privacy at this difficult time. Thank you.
Oh dear. Save yourself from commisery at purplebricks.co.uk.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months viewing. Service costs extra. See website for more details.
Ever noticed expensive things always seem to break down when you can least afford them? So if your boiler is on the blink, the last thing you want is to fork out for expensive repairs or a replacement. Rated 5-star excellent on Trustpilot, LS1 Boiler Installation could supply and fit a brand new Worcester Bosch boiler with free breakdown cover and a 10-year guarantee. All with zero deposit and low monthly interest-free payment options. For an instant quote, go to ls1boilerinstallation.co.uk. Conditions apply.
I've got friends coming over, and look at the state of you.
Garden furniture fail? Get to B&Q. Our stylish, versatile denier range is perfect for entertaining. It's made from hardware and acacia wood and features folding chairs, dining tables, storage and more. You can do it when you B&Q it.
Top marks to the @UberUK driver who battled the traffic to get my disabled mum home, then messaged to let me know she was safe. #great service. That was a tweet from John Preston. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better. Uber. Where to?
So, you've received a notice from HMRC inquiring into your tax affairs. Any investigation is likely to be disruptive to your business and costly, especially if you don't get the right help. At Barnes Rofe, we recommend that you seek advice straight away. Our specialist tax team will support you no matter what the issue is. For a free confidential chat, contact the tax experts at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
Get yourself in pole position with up to £1,000 extra off the list price of your new Renault car. Lap it up at the Renault sales event from 17th to 27th May. Search Renault offers today. New cars ordered 17th to 27th May and registered by 30th June. £1,000 Kadjar, Koleos, £500 on all other cars, excluding Traffic Passenger and Twizy. Selected vehicles while stocks last. Retail customers at participating dealers only.
Get in pole position and get up to £1,000 off the list price on your new Renault car at the Renault Retail Group sales event. Don't miss the action from the 17th to the 27th of May. Find your nearest dealer at renaultretail.co.uk and get up to £1,000 off your next Renault. Selected vehicles while stocks last, conditions apply.
Do you or a loved one forget things or occasionally struggle to find the right words? At St Pancras Clinical Research, we're looking for people with mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease to take part in a drug study. Participants must be aged over 55 and have someone who can help them with the study. All volunteers will be paid for their time and reasonable expenses. To find out more, visit stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Iain Dale on LBC.
10 to 12 on LBC. David Davis is taking your calls. You can watch us on YouTube, our website, LBC Twitter feed and on Facebook. Adam is in Peterborough. Very important place at the moment, Peterborough. Adam, what would you like to ask?
Something happening there, yeah.
There is something happening, yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. David.
Hi, Adam.
Hello there. I must say, I get slightly irritated when people say, oh, there might be a little bump in the road. You don't know whether it's going to be a bump in the road, you don't know if it's a great big pothole, or if it's going to be a massive chasm. And you don't know because you can't say, and you can't say because no one's ever done this before. So in the end, it is a massive gamble with the prosperity of this country and people's jobs. And I think I've always gone by the saying, never gamble more than you can afford to lose. Now, I've done a rough calculation. I think you've earned, for the last 6 months, about £100,000 in outside earnings, plus your MP salary. So it's quite clear. If it does go wrong, you won't be going to you won't be signing on for universal credit. You won't have to go to a food bank. And I think if it does go wrong, I really appreciate it. I think you should resign your MP salary and you should give up all your outside interests, and then you will know what a bump in the road is really like for families and people up north who rely on the European Union for their jobs. So I hope you would be kind enough to give up all those outside interests, sign on for universal credit, see what it's like, queue up at a food bank and see how likely a bump in the road is.
Well, do actually come from up north, as you put it, from Yorkshire in my case. Not all of what they do is dependent on the European Union. Indeed, Hull, a port you'd think would be highly dependent on it, is more dependent on the rest of the world trade, which is what will improve afterwards. Let's talk about the bump in the road rather than the personal things. The reason I say bump in the road is because I went through, over the course of a couple of years, about 300 different projects aimed at trying to see what the downsides were and trying to deal with every downside. Now, I mentioned earlier the Dover issue and what we could do about that, and there are a great deal of things we can do about that. We also dealt with all the issues where people say, oh, this is going to happen, or that's going to happen, and go wrong in some way, and we checked all those out and made sure they wouldn't go wrong. So a huge amount of work's been gone into it. Now, look, nobody can forecast perfectly what's going to happen tomorrow, but there are bigger risks than a no-deal Brexit, which is what you're talking about, I think, and bigger risks than that to the economy. And bear in mind, the people who keep predicting these disasters, previously the same people who wanted us to join the euro. If we'd been in the euro today, then we would have high unemployment. We would be facing the sorts of things that some of the countries of Europe have faced in the last decade. And my job is to be responsible about this and do it properly and get it right. Last point to make on wealth and otherwise, the people who are the most anti-Brexit in the country are the richest people in the country, the chief executives of most of our big corporations. Because why? Because they want to avoid any risks whatsoever, irrespective of the long-term opportunity. And that's the final thing to remember. All of this is a balance between risk and opportunity, and the big opportunities in the future, we're already heading towards 60% of our trade with the rest of the world, and that's where our future is.
But Adam has a point, doesn't he? Because you can't forecast how big the bumps in the road would be on, and you say you've done all these impact assessments, but some of them were...
The phrase I don't use.
Well, some of them, the ones that were published anyway, looked a little bit flimsy, didn't they?
That's why they weren't called impact assessments.
Well, yeah, but that's just semantics, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's not. No. Impact assessment means something. It means a forecast. And I said, no, we're not going to try and do forecasts for all these companies, because you can't. You can't get that right. What you can do is identify. Take a company, makes widgets of one sort in the north of England, and it sells abroad. If it sells 75% to Europe, and it's based on European regulation, and it has to have fast access across the border, then clearly that's a high risk versus one that sells most of the rest of the world or sells entirely domestically. Those analyses were very important.
The point that Adam is making, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, the point you're making is that if there are big bumps in the road in any particular sector, it's not the rich who are going to be affected most by this. It is going to be people at the bottom of the income pile. Yeah. And you would surely have to admit that.
I've always been acutely conscious of that.
So why take the risk?
Well, nothing is without risk in this, and this is a question of opportunity. Now, as well as risk, and in terms of the actual trade with Europe, I mean, people keep talking about the single market as though it's the single most important thing in our trade structure. It affects about 8% of the country, 8% of the economy of the country. It hasn't delivered any growth for the last 5-10 years. All the growth has come in the rest of the world, which is why 20 years ago we were 60% dependent on European trade. Now it's getting down towards 40%, and the rest of the world is going up towards 60%. Those advantages in the rest of the world are very important, and they will only become available to us in a big way once we've got the freedom to make our own trade deals, which means you can't be in the single market.
Well, just on that risk element, Iain, who's also in Peterborough, text, does Adam ever cross the road? Maybe it's a little too dangerous for him. I see the point, even if it's a rather flippant one.
Yeah. I'm trying to be polite. So
Adam, thank you. Let's go to Melanie, who's in Liskeard in Cornwall. Hello, Melanie.
Hello, Ian. Hello. Good morning, David. Pleasure to speak to you both.
Yeah.
My question is not about Brexit. It's actually about for a change. It's about the loan charge. And
loan charge. Right.
After David's amazing swashbuckling speech in the pre-Easter debate in the Commons, which clearly expressed the will of the House, and over 170 MPs now having signed the open letter to the Financial Secretary, that the government clearly not listening. What happens now is my question. What's next?
Well, just so everybody understands, briefly, Melanie, the loan charge controversy is about people who were required by their employers to accept a loan rather than a explicit payment as payment in order to avoid tax. And it was done over the course of a decade or so, and the Treasury, in the form of the HMRC, did not object to it. They just let it go. And then all of a sudden we changed the law.
And used it themselves.
And all of a sudden we changed the law and retrospectively ruined the lives of many people. I opened that. I'm glad you think it's swashbuckling. That speech with the phrase, the power to tax is the power to destroy. If you're in your pension years and somebody comes to you and says, I want £100,000, please, then it's a destructive, it will destroy your life. So I said to them at the time, if they don't respond properly, then we will start to restrict the Treasury's capability of making any sort of retrospective action and put that into law. So that's if you like the threat, and we're going to have to put lots and lots of pressure on them. When the finance bill comes around, we're going to have to put pressure on them, and if need be, deny them some other bits of business to get this through. But this is going to be quite a tough fight, Melanie, and it won't. Unfortunately, it won't be done in a month or two, and I think that's bad for the people
involved. And will
you
put pressure on Tory leadership candidates, particularly the one that you're supporting, to commit that if they become leader, this will be dealt with?
I will put pressure on all the Tory candidates to do just that, because it's a matter of justice. I mean, it's not just a matter of money. It's a matter of justice. It's also a matter of destroying people's lives.
Yes. You will have the gratitude of over 50,000 families for anything that you can do to actually bring pressure to those that can make decisions and make changes.
And I made a point this week that one man committed suicide tragically, and Jeremy Kyle's programme was taken off the air permanently. I know of at least 5 cases of people who've taken their own lives because of the loan charge, and yet the government seems blind to what's actually happening out there. So all power to your elbow, Melanie. You've got 2 supporters here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's a positive way to end the hour, I guess. Thank you very much, David.
Well, it's been fun.
It has been fun. Now, I'll be back on Monday. I've got a very big interview lined up on Monday, which will enrage some people. It's with Tony Blair, so do tune in, 7 o'clock Monday. And also, I will be back next week on the Sunday show, but also presenting LBC's European election coverage from 10 p.m. next Sunday. It is, what is it now? No, I don't even have to give the time now. I'm all of a fluster. It's Majid Nawaz next.
Thank you, Ian. It's the news of Tony Blair got you there. Got you in a fluster.
Right.
Coming up, joining me live in studio will be BAFTA-winning filmmaker Richard Kabaj talking about his new documentary on the hunt for Jihadi John. Before that, despite calls from pro-Palestinian campaigners in Europe, no artist or country pulled out of the Eurovision Song Contest.